J-E-T-S! Let's go!
Quick pass to Garrett Wilson. Touchdown! What a throw! Aaron Rodgers to Garrett Wilson.
J-E-T-S!
Let's get it! Wow! Jet-Life Stadium. Aaron Rodgers is home, baby. Jets media, I love you all. Recall is gone! Ready to take flight with the Jets, baby. Let's go! Woo!
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Good morning and welcome back to Jets Media. We are joined by a special guest today, Mr. Matt Hamilton from FanDuel TV. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Richie, appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. I saw you on FanDuel TV and I saw a beautiful clip. And I've been following you for a while, Matt. You do great work over there with Kay Adams, of course. And you said the Jets were winners at the NFL Combine, and your reason was because of what the offensive tackles showed at the Combine. And as we all know, the New York Jets are sitting at number 10, and we have a absolute, really good opportunity to find a franchise tackle to protect Aaron Rodgers and really fill out this offensive line, which is why I wanted to get you on and kind of talk more in depth about your overall thoughts of the prospects for the New York Jets at number 10. So why don't you just elaborate on what you said over there about why you feel like the Jets were a winner coming out of the Combine?
Yeah, I just think, as I'm watching it and I'm watching these tackles work out and I'm watching the wide receivers, and thinking about the Jets sitting in that 10th overall spot, I'm like, there's going to be somebody incredibly talented that can help out this offense there. And if I'm a Jets fan watching this Combine, I'm excited because, it's not every year. Sometimes at 10, some drafts, as we know, some drafts are weaker than others. This one is so strong, and especially at the positions that we've been hearing about for the Jets. And I do think, tackle has to be, offensive line has to be the priority over a receiver because, you have your number one in Garrett Wilson. Yes, you want to add some depth there, but offensive line really has to be the priority. And seeing, Joe Alt, Fuaga, some of these other tackles that are just athletic freaks, it just has to be exciting. If I'm a Jet fan watching this, I'm excited. We're going to get something that's really going to help out Aaron Rodgers next year. And the other thing I wanted to point out in that too was just, I think nationally, some people may forget the only reason the Jets have that 10th overall pick is because Rodgers got hurt. If he did play, that pick would have gone to Green Bay. So at least there's some silver lining in the nightmare situation that happened last year.
Nightmare situation is a kind way to say it, Matt. Now, is there a specific prospect out of those offensive tackles you mentioned that you feel like is the perfect fit for the Jets? Because like you said, Joe Alt is someone that I love, but I think we can both agree that the Jets may have to trade up to get him. I feel like it'd be really hard for Alt to fall to them at number 10. And Talisi Fuaga is a guy that's one of my favorites as well. And I also think that free agency is kind of really going to get a more clear idea of where the Jets are going to go, whether they need a left tackle, whether they need a right tackle, what's the offensive line look like, where are they putting Elijah Vera Tucker, because the Jets want to find a home for him. He started off his career with the Jets at left guard. He's played right guard. He's played right tackle. He's played left tackle. He's been injured the past 2 years. He's a big piece of this Jets offensive line. So which prospect out of all the guys that you like at number 10 for the Jets do you feel like is the most perfect fit? Or do you feel like it's such a deep class that pretty much any of the top guys is going to be slit right in and make the Jets an immediate impact for that offensive line?
And that's what has me kind of torn, because I do think it is so deep. They can sit there at 10 and they're going to get a guy who I'm a fan of. Fuaga, you mentioned, it looks like right now he's going to go around that slot. But at the same time, Joe Alt is, he's a Jonathan Ogden type prospect to me. He's one of those, unicorn type tackle prospects that comes along once every 10, 15 years. And with where the Jets are, I know Rodgers is saying he wants to play 4 more years, and all of that. But with the way the roster is right now, I would think about trading up to go grab him, because I think he's going to be that plug and play guy that elevates this offensive line instantly. And, if you're the Jets, I think you have to push the chips in and go for it now, because, regardless of what Rodgers is saying, I think the window is right now, and you have to do everything you can to push for this year to make it happen.
Absolutely. I do feel like wherever they go at number 10, any offensive tackle is going to really provide a big impact. And we know last year, Aaron Rodgers goes down. The offensive line was a mess. I think the injuries were a big issue for that. What's your thoughts of the current state of the Jets offensive line? Like I mentioned, Elijah Vera Tucker, and we also have Joe Tippmann, two guys that are very versatile, two guys that are extremely young. Joe Tippmann's coming off a really promising rookie season, showing his versatility playing both center and right guard. Jets fans are having a debate right now. Where is Joe Tippmann going to be? Are the Jets going to go find a free agent center or even draft a center who's going to be there and slide Tippmann to right guard? Is Tippmann the franchise center? Like, the two guys that we love are so versatile, Jets fans don't know where the Jets are going to find their homes, and I feel like that's what they're really trying to figure out. So when it comes to Tippmann and AVT, where do you see them finding their homes this season?
It's a great point. I think, as you mentioned before, it's going to be dictated by free agency a little bit. I think with Vera Tucker, I think he's absolutely a guard. That's where he's at his best. That's where he really shines, and he's an absolute stud. With Tippmann, the center class is super, super deep in free agency this year. So if they are able to, get one of those premier centers, maybe he moves to guard as well. But I think wherever you put him, as you said, I think he was super promising last year. And, as much as the Jets offensive line got picked apart last season, like you said, a lot of it was injuries. I think they're a lot closer to having a good offensive line than they get credit for.
Absolutely. Shout out to my man Mutviles in the chat, member of the channel for 7 months. We always win in the offseason, Richie. Let's win on the field. 4 more years of Rodgers equals at least 2 rings. Okay. We have to solve the line and get JJ at wide receiver. I mean, Justin Jefferson at wide receiver is definitely a pipe dream. I'm definitely not going to bet on that one to happen. But Mutviles, I appreciate you as always. Now, where do you see the Jets going at the offensive line position, Matt, in free agency? Are there any guys that you feel like would be a perfect fit at offensive tackle? We've heard them linked to David Bakhtiari, of course, because of the Aaron Rodgers connection if he gets free. Tyron Smith, the veteran, the former Dallas Cowboy. There's a lot of other guys available that the Jets could bring in next week. So are there any guys in free agency that you feel like would be a perfect fit?
Yeah, I think Bakhtiari is the one you have to look at, right? Because it's the obvious connection. And we know Rodgers has had some influence on personnel, and we know how close he is with Bakhtiari. And the question there with him is, he's had a couple serious injuries over the last couple of years. How is his health? Where is he at there? That's going to be the thing that the Jets are really going to have to seriously evaluate, because I don't think you're at this stage now. Obviously you want to make Aaron happy, but you can't let him just dictate all the decisions if Bakhtiari isn't in the shape they need him to be. Tyron Smith is another interesting one. Again, the question with him is injuries. He's a Hall of Fame talent at tackle, but he's really been through it injury wise over the past couple of years too. And we were talking about the center class. Seeing Mitch Morse get released the other day, that's an interesting one to me, because he's a great center. I mean, I was a student coach in Missouri back in the day. He came along a little bit after I left, but I followed his career from college all the way through the beginning. He's a guy that you bring in that's a phenomenal leader, one of the top centers in the league, and being able to steal him away. I know Buffalo released him, but still being able to take him from Buffalo, I feel like adds a little bit of extra juice to his signing like that. But he would, he'd be the captain of that offensive line instantly, bringing a guy like that.
Yeah, and we know Aaron loves his veterans behind center. Jets fans were kind of upset at first that Joe Tippmann was not starting week 1. We had Connor McGovern as our starting center last year, and I think a big reason for that was because Aaron feels more comfortable behind someone that knows the game rather than a rookie that's going to learn the ropes. So that's definitely something to consider. Now, when it comes to the Jets at number 10, you said that this draft class is so rich and so deep at offensive tackle. Do you see a world where the Jets love this class so much that they trade back? Because, as you mentioned, the Jets have the 10th overall pick because of that Aaron Rodgers trade of him getting injured, but we don't have a second-round pick. So there are some Jets fans that's thinking to themselves, could this be the first time we see Joe Douglas trade back? Because we've never seen him do that in the first round. He's usually aggressive. He loves his guy. He moved up for AVT. He moved up for Jermaine Johnson. There's a lot of other guys that Joe Douglas has shown his aggression. But could this be the draft where he slides back a few picks to recoup some assets in the mid-rounds because this draft class is so deep? Or do you feel like it would be more, more realistic for them to stay at number 10 to take their guy?
I'm never going to say never, but I do think we see them either stick at 10 or move up. I think, as I said before, I just think with where they are in the process of building this roster, I know there are going to be people outside of the Jets fan base that might laugh at a statement like that, but they're a couple pieces away from being able to contend in the AFC. So if there's a guy there at 10 that you absolutely love, you get him. Or if there's a guy a couple picks ahead of you, you think about trading up for him. You have to go for it. Especially while Garrett Wilson's still on his rookie deal, while Breece Hall's still on his rookie deal. Like, you got some really young players playing on the cheap. Build around them, get the most talent you can around them and try to cash in during this window.
So we talked a little bit before we went live, and I said that Jets fans are a little scarred, to say the least, from last year, right? We heard a lot of high praise from the media heading into last season, and we had the Hard Knocks hype. Of course, Aaron Rodgers comes in. We have all this talent, and then it got ripped from us in 4 snaps. And now Jets fans are coming off this past year of like, we're trying not to buy into the hype all over again because we're trying to protect our emotions. Because let me tell you, Matt, I was there when Rodgers went down week 1. I'm still feeling traumatized today about that. But what can you say to Jets fans to kind of give us a realistic, optimistic view of the season, of why there is a chance that we can actually make some noise, compete in the AFC East division, and actually make the postseason for the first time in 13 years? It's been that long, Matt. That long.
I know. And Kay and I were at Jets camp last year too. We talked to Saleh, we talked to Rodgers. There was such a positive energy around that place that you hadn't felt in a while. And, again, we don't have rooting interest, but a team like the Jets, a fan base like the Jets, you want to see them do well. And it was exciting to be there for that and to see the way things unfolded. Obviously it was disappointing for us too. But as I said before, I think this roster is really, really close. I think seeing what's going on in Buffalo right now, seeing some of the dysfunction and some of the turmoil in Miami, there's an opportunity here. And I know the Jets have their own reports, off the field to deal with too. But there is a big opportunity here in the AFC East. There is a vulnerability there at the top. And I think the Jets can capitalize on that. And I think, I grew up in New York, in the New York area. I've, seen everything that the Jets fans have gone through. And I remember talking to Kay last year because I was listening to WFAN and someone called into Brandon Tierney and right before the season. And he's like, I don't know why people are getting excited about Rodgers. It's going to be Edwin Diaz. He's going to take the field. He's going to hurt himself instantly. And I remember I'm like, how can you have that mentality? Like have some positivity. And then as soon as it happened, I'm like, these fans know their team.
I blame him.
And that's what Kay said. Kay's like, it's really him. He manifested it. You got to keep a positive. So I'm going to encourage Jets fans, keep a positive attitude, manifest some positivity out of this year, and maybe it will happen.
Well, that's what I try to do here on my channel at Jets Media, is I try my best to be optimistic and really bring some positive light to this Jets team, because it's been 13 years of darkness. And last year, it was a dark, dark year, to say the least, Matt, after watching our guy go down after all of that hype. Now, you mentioned how the Jets stack up against the AFC East division. You mentioned the Buffalo Bills. I'm curious to get your thoughts of the Miami Dolphins and how you feel like they stack up. Obviously, they're in an interesting, situation. Their defense is kind of just not really looking good right now, just from the perspective of releasing some guys. Christian Wilkins, they're really prized captain of their defense, potentially walking in free agency. Are they going to pay Tua? Like, what's your overall thoughts of the Miami Dolphins? And how do you think the New York Jets can compete against them with the Buffalo Bills right now, seemingly kind of going through their own little transition? How do you feel like the AFC East is going to really because I'm trying to figure out, and it's hard to ask you this question, Matt, just because we're right at the beginning of the offseason. We don't know what the free agency is going to look like. We don't know what the draft's going to look like. So this is more of a fair question to ask you after the draft. But as of right now, how do you feel like the AFC East is going to shake up?
Yeah, where things stand right now, when you look, you hit it on the head. There are definitely reasons to be concerned about the Dolphins' defense a little bit. You lose Xavier Howard, you lose Christian Wilkins, Vic Fangio exits in the fashion that he did. Because I don't think a lot of people realize the Dolphins, they got into the playoff. They were so injured when they got into the playoffs, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, pretty much 75% of their starters were done by the time they got to that Kansas City game. But over the second half of the season, when they were healthy, that was the number one defense in the NFL over the second half of the season, which, even following this as closely as I do, shocked the hell out of me when I really looked at the numbers. They were playing some phenomenal football down the stretch before all the injuries, and, they weren't able to capitalize, and now they lose some of those key pieces. So that's going to be a concern. Offensively, I think, obviously, they still should be very good. And then when you look at the Bills, you lose all of those veteran pieces. And the DBs they let go, they're not at their peaks anymore. They're on the downslope, but still they're talented guys, veteran leaders like Jordan Poyer and Tre'Davious White. There's a void in leadership that's going to be there. So I really do think, the Jets are on the upswing while some of these teams are dealing with some serious losses.
Well, that sounds amazing to hear from, a non-biased Jets fan, just to hear from you, Matt, that you're not a Jets fan. You're actually feeling like there's some positive vibes. It makes me feel justified of everything that I'm saying on my channel. Now, as we all know, the Jets are linked to a lot of wide receivers, right? Not only just the offensive line is an issue, but there is an issue at wide receiver. We have one star and one stud in Garrett Wilson that Jets fans are super excited about entering year number 3. He's changing his jersey number to the Ohio State days number 5, and we're all expecting him to absolutely go crazy this year with Aaron Rodgers. The guy had over 1,000 yards in his first 2 years with bad quarterback play. Can you just imagine what he's going to look like with Aaron Rodgers? But it's no secret that the Jets are really looking to add. They want a big-time weapon next to Garrett Wilson. Now, they've been linked to pretty much every single receiver that becomes available in free agency or the trade market. So where do you see the Jets going in free agency at the wide receiver spot?
I mean, it's tough because I think, I don't think it's a depth need, right? Like they need quality. It's not like they need another number one because, as you said, Garrett Wilson is that guy. So I know some fans are, talking about Justin Jefferson, let's say, or, guys like that. But that's not really, necessarily what they need. They need depth and they need consistency. And, there is some of that in this free agent class. There's a lot of that in the draft too. This receiver class is unbelievable. And there's going to be guys in the middle rounds that we're going to see really flourish in this league. But as for free agency, I would love to see them get a real deep threat guy. Hollywood Brown is out there. I don't know what he's going to command on this market. He's had, some injury issues, some inconsistency, but again, he was also asked to be a number 1 for much of his career, which I never thought he was. I think if you slot him in as a number 2 next to Garrett Wilson, we're going to see things out of him we haven't seen yet, especially with his ability to take the top off the defense. I think that's one thing that the Jets were really missing last year was that real serious vertical threat, and it's going to help it helps everything out when you have that guy. So I look at him as being a guy that's a really good complement. I know there's a lot of talk about, trading for T. Higgins as well, making something work with the Bengals. I really don't see the Bengals letting him go. I think they're in a position too, where they're kind of all in on this year before Joe Burrow's contract fully kicks in. But I think guys like him or guys like Marquise are more, realistic option. Maybe you can lure Calvin Ridley in. I also see, Odell as a strong possibility. And I know, he didn't have his best year last year, but he started to show signs down the stretch that he was becoming, more like the Odell that we have known over the years. I don't think he's ever obviously going to be back to what he was before all the injuries with the Giants, but he's still an effective player. And if you bring in him as a part of, a package, a group of free agents, some draft picks, another guy to add depth, I think he's very valuable as well.
Yeah, Odell Beckham Jr. was this close to being a Jet last year. I don't know if you saw that report or OBJ kind of told it himself, the story that he was on his way to Jersey to sign with the Jets, and the Ravens called him, hey, what do you need for you to not get on that plane to go sign with the Jets? And OBJ said, I need this. Baltimore's like, all right, now you're a Raven. So we know the interest is there mutually between Odell Beckham Jr. and the New York Jets. You mentioned Calvin Ridley's name. I like the Hollywood Brown idea. The Jets were linked to Tyler Boyd, right? We're talking about T. Higgins. I don't really think T. Higgins is realistic, but Tyler Boyd is a free agent, the other Bengals wide receiver that I feel like has been, really reliable for Cincinnati as a number 3 receiver, honestly. And I feel like that's what the Jets need. We're not looking for a number 1, right? Like you said, we're looking for someone that can complement Garrett, provide depth at the position. And I think getting a guy like Boyd and then getting a guy in the draft to add to the young, Xavier Gibson, Jason Brownlee. Who knows what we're doing with Randall Cobb? If he's coming back, probably he will be because Aaron Rodgers is going to force him to. But I don't know if Jets fans are going to want that. But we shall see, right? Now, there's a lot of other moves that the Jets are going to be making in free agency outside of just offensive line, outside of wide receiver. And the last question I have for you, Matt, in terms of where do you see the Jets going, is the quarterback position, right? Zach Wilson is potentially, not potentially, but he's going to get traded. And we need a backup quarterback. We also, I'll speak for myself. I want a quarterback that I can look at and say, hey, he can potentially be the guy. Because Aaron Rodgers is the short-term answer, not the long-term answer. And I would love the Jets to even take a swing on a quarterback in the mid-rounds that he can sit and learn behind Aaron. But there's also, the Jets got to get a veteran behind Aaron Rodgers if, unfortunately, he goes down again. So how do you think the Jets are going to tackle the backup quarterback position in the offseason? Because we know last year that, at least I hope, they learned from their mistakes.
Yeah, I think they have to go get somebody that has at least some starting experience. And I mean, the ideal thing, I think, is you find somebody that's kind of in between, that has some starting experience, but that is still young, that can maybe try to reinvent themselves, sitting for a couple of years, learning behind Rodgers. So I don't know. I know this might sound crazy, but let's say, the Patriots move, in all likelihood, move on from Mac Jones. Maybe that's a guy you get in there to sit behind a Rodgers. I think that type of a guy would be the type of player I would target. One of these, and maybe even, I think Justin Fields is probably going to be a starter. So I do believe that the Bears are eventually going to move him. But that could be an interesting one too, to have him sit for a little bit and learn. But again, I do think Rodgers is going to push to play as long as he can. So I don't know if Fields is the most realistic option, but just somebody, I'm looking for somebody like that who is, a former first round pick, didn't flourish, probably isn't going to get the second contract from his team, but still has potential, because I think we're seeing more and more now these guys have second acts, like we saw from a Baker Mayfield last year, like we saw from Geno in Seattle. The quarterbacks are getting given up on faster and faster because since the CBA changed in 2011 and the rookie contract structure changed. And I think that's opened the door for more of these second acts going forward for guys. Ryan Tannehill is another one that we saw benefit in that situation, because again, I think there are quarterbacks that you're going to see flourish right away. There are others that are just in a terrible situation or needed more development or needed to sit for a little bit, that are going to continue to grow. Because I don't think, studying quarterbacks as long as I have in this league, you don't see what a guy truly is, the true peak of his potential, until he gets around 30 years old. That's when guys kind of become fully who they are. No matter who you look at over the last 20 years, it really pretty much consistently has been the case. I think there's potential out there on this market. I think there's a bunch of those guys that fall into that category that may be available even via trade.
Yeah, and I just want to put one name out there to get your thoughts about that, and it has to be via trade, and that's Sam Howell. That's the guy that I would personally, in terms of like a young guy that hasn't been able to prove himself, the Washington Commanders are potentially drafting a new quarterback. Like, Sam Howell is someone I feel like, because he could be a backup and potentially the long-term answer, who knows. What are your thoughts of Sam Howell for the New York Jets as the backup?
That's one I hadn't thought about, but I think that really fits the bill. And I think that's a great call by you, because I'm a big fan of his. I think he was in a miserable situation last year. That was the worst offensive line in the league by far. Yes, he had some talented receivers, but he just got absolutely pummeled. And by the end of the year, he was beaten up. And but you saw the promise that he showed early on in the year. I mean, he lit up the Eagles. He was lighting teams up left and right when he actually had a little bit of time. I was really impressed with what I saw from him. I do think he has a chance to be successful in this league somewhere in the right situation. And that's a great call. That's the perfect type of player. Because again, if God forbid something does happen again, he's a guy that can step in and win you some games. And I've been impressed with, one, the talent level that he's shown, but two, just the mentality, because again, he went through it last year. He got pummeled. He had a game, that game against Buffalo where he turned the ball over 5 times and comes right back out the next week and bounces back like nothing ever happened. And those are the things mentally that you're looking for in guys. And he has that. He just needs a functional situation around him.
Yeah, I agree. I think Sam Howell is a really intriguing option. You mentioned other guys like Mac Jones that I never thought about. That is definitely intriguing. And could they draft a quarterback? That's the other question that a lot of Jets fans are talking about in the mid-rounds. We shall see. Well, Matt, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to hop on the Jets Media Show. Do you want to just introduce yourself or just let the people know what you got cooking up at FanDuel TV and where people can find you?
Yeah, so Up and Adams is on every day, 11 a.m. Eastern. You can find us on FanDuel TV, or we have a live YouTube stream as well, which has some cool little behind-the-scenes shots during breaks. We stay on, and Kay and I kind of talk through some things, and that's been a fun little feature that we added this year. But yeah, we'll be covering free agency in depth. We'll be covering the draft. We're going to have a ton of prospects on. Hoping to get a few Jets on as well. We've been talking with Breece Hall back and forth. Hopefully we can make that happen. But yeah, FanDuel TV, our YouTube stream, 11 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Thursdays during the off season. It's Monday through Fridays during the season. And you can find me on Twitter at MattHamilton25.
Yeah, Matt's X is down below in the description, his Twitter account, so definitely go shoot him a follow. Matt, thank you again so much for joining. It was great to get your thoughts about what is cooking up with the New York Jets in the offseason, and maybe we'll have you back on more in-depth after the offseason, maybe recap what the Jets did. So thank you again, Matt, for joining the show. That's going to wrap up this one, folks. Don't forget to hit the like button on your way out. We'll see you later, and enjoy the weekend. Peace.